And here's where we bring in our friends, James Sharman and Craig Forrest. And I've known Sharms for, 20 years, 25 years. So let me bring in James Sharman and Craig Forrest from our friends at Footy Prime. Gentlemen, good morning. You guys had chaos. We had chaos of a different variety. So who won the toss and who is going to either defer or go first? How are we going to do this? Who won the toss?
How about the Hall of Famer? Let's let Craig do his thing. You know, he's a guy that brings the legitimate credibility. John, you know, as you know, 20 years in the biz and still no credibility from my end.
Oh, what? All right, so we'll go to Craig. So, Craig, madness last night involving Toronto. I did not have Luka Gavrin on my bingo card, being the third keeper in MLS history to have a goalie goal and the chaos that was personified there. So, for those that missed it, because we were paying attention to the match that precedes Atlanta and Toronto with Atlanta and New England, what did we miss?
Wow, well, it was pretty special. Well, coming from a goalkeeper is incredibly special. I never scored a goal. I always wanted to score a goal. And for Gavron to do it in his 25th or 26th professional appearance, I mean, he's averaging more goals than Zimmerman at center back, I think, per game. So his goal ratio per appearances is actually very high for a goalkeeper.
So, Sharms, let me ask you this. With the addition of Josh Sargent, there's two S's very close together, and when you're up early in the morning, it doesn't wash very well. When you have the addition of a Josh Sargent to the offense, how different is it looking now than it had been before? As Sharms, I think, is frozen. Nothing like live. You know what I'm saying? So Sharms froze. So Craig, let me ask you that question since Sharms froze, and I'll go ahead and make sure that James comes back in and he's unfrozen. See, that's how this works. So how different are they with Sargent in the lineup offensively now that they have this talisman up top?
Well, I think he's going to do very well in this league. I mean, most designated players, attacking players do well. I mean, look at the league last night. I think there was 43 goals in 11 games. I think it was. I don't know if there's ever been more goals in a day for MLS in history. Maybe, but that was a lot of goals, and it's a frantic type of style. Certainly with Toronto FC, if they can get themselves sorted out defensively, I think they'll have a chance to do something. But overall, they're pretty soft defensively. They, not overly organized at times. Like I said, frantic. But Josh Sargent up top, I think he'll do very well. He's getting lots of chances, and he's strong, physical, and I think he's enjoying his time at Toronto SC so far.
All right, so let's talk backline and the whack-a-mole that folks seem to be doing when it comes to finding all these opportunities. Where are these gaps and weaknesses, and how is it attempting to be addressed? And I think we need all the state secrets for Atlanta coming off of this loss to New England to attack Toronto in yet another matinee at BMO. So what are we staring at here?
Well, I think if Atlanta get at Toronto, they will create chances. There's no doubt about that. But Toronto will also cause problems to just about any team in MLS at times. So they have that to deal with it. But if they can organize themselves and play strong defensively, hold up Josh Sargent, I think they can get a result. But as far as the team goes, over the last few years, it's been difficult. I mean, Atlanta's kind of in the same position, not doing particularly well the last couple seasons. So trying to find their way in the league. And I think that's where Toronto SC are right now. They've made some good moves for the last few years. I think they're handcuffed with some of their salaries and caps. So they freed up that. They brought in a designated player with Josh Sargent. I think they're moving in the right direction.
All right, so Sharms, let me ask you this. The shiny object is obviously Josh now. Who else do folks need to focus on? Who's in the spot shadow for you for the success here in the short term with this addition of a major megastar DP? Who else do folks need to gravitate toward to sit there and go, oh, okay, so Toronto is doing well despite what we just talked about on the back line. Toronto is successful because of not just A, but B and C.
Yes, it's a good question. And I think TFC fans are still very suspicious of any players that are doing the job properly at TFC, given what's happened the last little while, given the Italian DPs they had that just didn't work out. But I think the optimism surrounds Georgi Mihailovic, who obviously is out right now for a while. A real gut punch to the team with the injury to him, the pelvis issue there. But Daniel Shalhoui has arrived as a player that I think not many TFC fans knew too much about. Maybe they saw him as being a squad player, someone that could step in and do a job at a time, but he's become a star. He's become a goal-scoring star, a real fantastic footballer who's brought a lot more to the table than we thought.
Well, and to that point, I mean, it's Shalhoui is one of those guys, Craig, that in Kansas City, he was a troublemaker. And if you did not account for him, then there was going to be issues. And now I think that Toronto fans are seeing what Daniel Shalhoui brought to the table in Major League Soccer. And this is the guy that you were hoping for when you brought him in, not the guy that was having the issues when Sporting was having their issues. Shalhoui obviously was somewhat of the personification of that. You're getting the unleashed Daniel Shalhoui now as a part of that offense, and that was what you were obviously looking for.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I think he was a great addition, and his ability to get forward, take chances, find space, find opponents, know where the space is, and find a good pass is certainly within his capabilities, and it is showing certainly in offensive zones for Toronto SC and Shalhoui.
All right, so Sharms, we talked a little defense with Craig. Let me get your thoughts on the back line and the net with Toronto. I want to get your perspective on things and what you're staring at as well here in 2026 after the first handful of matches.
Well, I know you mentioned the Gavron goal. It's funny, earlier this week on Footy Prime, the podcast, we were talking to Craig about his experience.
Get that plug in there. Nice.
Had to get it in there, John. You know, I mean, it was honestly for a team that has had so few high points in the last number of years. It really is one of those goals that we'll talk about forever. But just this week, we're talking to Craig about, you know, how he almost scored a goal a couple of times for Ipswich and West Ham. Never really happened. He was talking about it was a relegation tussle last day of the season. They had to score a goal at Ipswich. He was up the pitch, back the pitch, up the pitch. In the end, he had to stay back in goal, but he was just hoping for that moment. He never got to enjoy it. So to see Luka Gavron, who's a really good guy, right? This guy's a solid human being. He's a Canadian boy. To see him get his moment after being a backup the last number of years to Sean Johnston and getting his chance and having a bit of a, it's not a poor start to this season, but he's finding his feet as a starter. To have that moment was brilliant. So hopefully he can build on that. And in front of him, I mean, listen, you mentioned Walker Zimmerman, who I think is a legitimate, top center half in this league, very important. But it all starts and finishes with Richie Larea. Whether he's on the left or on the right-hand side, he's beloved by that fan base. He's beloved by Canadians. He brings that real tenacity. And I think sometimes his ability is overlooked because of that tenacity, how he always plays on the edge. He's a very, very good player, adds great pace. He can defend. He can attack. So I think it kind of starts and ends with Richie as a wider defender, but they have to sort it out, right, overall, because even in their worst moments of last season, they could defend pretty well. This year, sure, it's entertaining. I think Robin Fraser's getting grayer as we talk, just with the opportunities this team concedes over and over again. He's got to get that sorted out, but as any footballer will tell you, it's easier to coach defense and get that figured out throughout a season than offense. And they have the offense right now. So I guess that's the positive. But yeah, they've got to figure something out of the back because they concede way too many goals.
All right. So speaking of the back, I'm going to ask the keeper about a keeper question. The differences between Luka and Sean Johnson, personality-wise, distribution, how they handle themselves, when folks are drifting into CTFC, what are they seeing in Luka that they didn't see in Sean?
That's a really good question. I mean, Johnson was a solid goalkeeper. There's no question about that. And he would still be here. I think that probably as a money thing, contract thing, and decided that it was time for Gavron to get an opportunity as a starter. I think as a starter, it is a little bit more intense, playing week in, week out. That is going to be a bit of a problem and a challenge for Gavron. Johnson's quite obviously used to that intensity. And like I said, it was a very, very solid goalkeeper in a very poor team last year. So Gavin is going to be up against it because defensively they haven't sorted it out yet, and he's under an awful lot of pressure. But I have a lot of confidence in him, and he has grown in confidence as the season's gone on here, even in the early stages. So that's the biggest thing. I think it was just for him to be in the same level as Johnson is would really be his goal at the end of the season, which I think he's capable of.
And then
Actually, John, just last couple of weeks with the international camp in Toronto, Canada was based at the TFC training camp, and Luka Gavrin was in there. He wasn't part of the squad necessarily, but he was in there as that extra goalkeeper, especially when Max Crepeau was a little bit hobbled to start the camp. So he's getting some time with some very good footballers, different coaches as well. So at 25, I mean, Craig will tell you, he's still young for a goalkeeper. He's still not even close to his prime. Some of these guys don't break through to their late 20s, right? So I think TFC have a pretty good one there, but there will obviously be a little bit of patience. But as long as he's scoring goals, they'll be happy.
Dude, I see what you did there. Not quite in his prime. I see what you're doing there, Sharms. It's good stuff. Footy Prime guys hanging out with us. Part of the equation. I think how many Footy Primers are there now, James? Like 28. How many 20 on your
way? Sometimes trying to herd them and organize them, it feels that way. Yeah, no, there's 6 of us. But it feels like more sometimes. A lot of opinions, a lot of voices.
Well, but that's good stuff, though. I do want to get into how you guys have evolved as well before you get out of here and we discuss things. So then, James, let me ask you this. You get behind Shallowy and Sargent. Then you're looking at folks like Kerr and Sifu and Osorio and Coelho and folks like that. You know, if you're not a true TFC sicko, these might be folks that aren't even household names in their own household, but they're part of that glue that Robin Fraser is looking for the overall success for Toronto FC in the midfield and in the attack. With these glue guys that are there in front of that back line that's got issues, what do they bring to the table?
Yes, it's a good one, that, because some of these players, you mentioned DeAndre Kerr as a prime example, Kobe Franklin, who's now scored back-to-back games. He's doing really well. These are young players that have come through from the academy in just the worst time possible, for a young player. During the Bernadeschi and Insigne era, where it was, I'm not sure whether it was the all-time lows, but considering the money those guys were on and the fractures, shall we say? I think it's fair to say, maybe in the room.
Is not happy with what happened with that rate of return, brother. That's all I.
It didn't. Yeah, it didn't work out great, did it? When you look at the DP signings in the history of MLS, maybe the worst too. Certainly Insigne being the worst. But anyone that's been in a sports team that's losing all the time, you worry about the mentality of those young players learning from those players, right? So it's always a concern. So when you see these young players playing quite well now, DeAndre Kerr getting some minutes finally, up front, I think it's really important. And I think glue's a good way to put it. You want to see academy players get an opportunity just for the good of the club, right? To give those young players that hope that, maybe that can be me next time. But they're good young players. They won't be stars, I don't think, but players that can be good squad members and are cheap, right? And in a cap system, you need to have those guys that can put a job in with a decent price there. Above them, you have the Coelhos, midfielders who have been there for a while now, have that kind of tenacity, have a lot to prove, but is playing quite well right now. And then, of course, led by the captain, Jonathan Osorio, who no one's played more games with this club than Jonathan Osorio. He's a leader. Again, another great guy, but a Canadian boy, a Toronto boy. If he's not the face of the team, he's I think the soul of that team, him and Richie Larea. And still so important to kind of bring those young kids through and saying, forget about the last 2, 3, 4 years. You had to endure that nonsense. This is a new start for TFC, and maybe we can be in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and Richie Larea just fell down again. Craig, let me ask you. let me ask this: schedule compression and roster rotation. When it comes to this stretch of matches for pretty much anybody in Major League Soccer, 4-12 for Atlanta United. Pretty much the same for Toronto FC. Are you anticipating I guess let me phrase it this way. How different an 11 are you anticipating from midweek, considering all of the energy that was exerted last night? You're going to have today, tomorrow, and then, oh, by the way, it's brunch. It's time to play. I mean, when it comes to roster rotation, and Sharms, you can follow up as well. But Craig, how much roster starting 11 rotation are you looking at here?
I wouldn't expect an awful lot at this stage. I mean, he's trying to find his best 11 and his best system with what he has. Obviously, there's a couple injuries that he's dealing with, but overall, it's like getting that consistency with a team and a lineup that is physically able to deal with those pressures. Not just, we talked about the goalkeeper, but obviously the out players as well. And I think they're in pretty good nick. They're in pretty good shape. And I wouldn't expect an awful lot of rotation from last night to the next game. Would you, Sharms?
No, I agree. I think, like you mentioned there, Craig, injuries are a big part of this. They have got some high-profile injuries right now. You want to get some consistency in that back four, and the way Franklin's playing, you can't drop him at the moment, I don't think. So he stays in there. Richie's going nowhere. Monlouis and Zimmerman need to get some kind of chemistry, and you get that by playing minutes, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. You might see a Derek Etienne Jr. get an opportunity, out wide, maybe for DeAndre Kerr, for example. But the depth, as much as it's improving, it's still a work in progress. I know Keith Pelly was talking when they fired the Maple Leafs GM, Brad Treliving, and they were talking about how he's rebuilt TFC. It's like, no, you haven't. It's being rebuilt. It's in the process of being rebuilt, but the depth isn't there. You can't compare it to the top teams in the league. So I think it'd be a dangerous game to play with over-rotation at this point. And come on, they can play 2 games a week. These are footballers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pelly actually said that they've rehabbed and fixed Toronto FC, huh?
Yeah, through data and analytics. That's how they did it. All done, finished.
Mm-hmm.
Job done.
So, all right. So then, if I was in that press conference situation, I would ask, if they're doing analytics, how do you measure heart? How do you measure the South American, what they call in South America, the garra? How do you?
John, true
how do you
story.
measure this? Yeah,
Craig, remember this. They figured it out years ago. I remember being at a press conference during the glory years, actually just before the glory years. I think when Tim Bezpachenko first arrived, and Tim is a big data guy, as you know, and he said we've found data points to measure grit.
Oh,
I remember him saying that to this day, and no one asked him, well, what do you mean by that? How do you measure grit? And he had, so they've got the answers.
Okay, just checking. I mean, because that's one of the things that when you're into analytics. Now, let me ask this, and jump in, because I think we've just hit the freeform section of the program. Is it literally 100% analytics? Is it a mix? What are we talking about here? Are they all in on analytics, or are they looking at shiny objects and going, we can't resist, Josh Sargent kind of a thing? Where are they in the analytics VU meter? Where are they here?
Oh, it's interesting because, I mean, when you talk about analytics, it would like just drop in the designated player situation when you had Toronto FC has nailed the designated players back in the day. But they've also had some disasters in the designated player.
Yes.
Jermaine Defoe is a good example. I thought I played with him at West Ham when he was a young lad, and I really thought he would have done well here, but you never know if they're going to settle. So I think they're in a position with a guy like Josh Sargent. Forget about analytics. He's settling, and he's going to be fine in North America. Like, we know he's going to be fine, and he played at a level that we know is going to be conducive to doing well in MLS as well. So analytics can play a major role, and we're seeing more and more of it these days. But I think you're right. How do you really get to the deep side of the heart of it, and what does that bring, and how do we measure that? I think that's still impossible.
I will say though, I mean, measuring heart, I mean, this team has shown resilience to come back.
Yeah,
in the last 3 games.
Some of your matinee, Sharms, this year where you're sitting there and you're going, okay, get out the shovels, and all of a sudden it just turns into chaos.
Yeah, it's just done, right? And I think we're kind of jaded from seasons past where you're down 2 goals, forget about it, this team is out of it. But not this year. This team will fight back, but they will go down 2 goals. That's the problem so far, So it's not perfect, but there's certainly there's an inner belief with this team that we haven't seen for a long time. But they are still have that propensity to give up that late goal. I don't know whether, I mean, listen, Jason Hernandez seems to be a pretty smart guy. I'm actually going to interview him next week, so maybe I'll come on and give you a better answer. But I think he's going to, he certainly takes, he understands the importance of analytics, but I don't think it's going to be everything. I think you have to balance it, use it as the tool. We're going through that right now in hockey and up here in Canada a lot. You know, it's the hot. Well, it's not the hot new world where it's been there for a long time, right? But data analytics, you know, yes, it's very important in modern sports. Has been for probably a decade now, right? But it's not everything. Just use it properly. And the signings so far this season have worked out pretty well. But like Craig said, Josh Sargent, you don't really need data points to prove that he's a good player. He's been doing it in some good leagues in Europe for a long time.
My data point tells me that Josh Sargent is a good player for us to have up top. You know, I mean,
yeah, right. You score 12 goals in the league championship regularly. You're probably going to score 12 to 15 goals in MLS, you would think. So, and I think he will. He's been a nice signing so far.
If he's in a system that fits the skill set, because we are experiencing that right now with Latte Lot, who was at Middlesbrough and close to 20 a year. And it has been an adjustment for him to come over here to Major League Soccer under multiple managers with Atlanta United, now with Tata Martino this year. It's been an adjustment for him. So I think it has to be system plus adaptation, I think, is what you're looking at here. And I think that Josh is doing that early on. Craig and James hanging out with us from Footy Prime. Another couple of minutes with them because I have to get them to give their blatant promo about where their game has advanced themselves and where they can be heard and all these kinds of things. We have to fill out the promo sheet for you guys before you get out of here. Craig, expectations for TFC coming into this season were what?
Well, you would think that they were aiming for a playoff spot. If they can get into the playoffs, that would be a success for them this season, I think. And I think they're heading that way and look as though they've got a chance to absolutely do that.
And, you know, Sharms, now that you see where they are right now in the standings in the East, when you look at adjustments, players coming in, you have, we kind of have the idea of these are the guys, they're integrating. And right now, looking at where Toronto is, you're sixth at 3-2-4, middle of the pack, but there's still some space before you get to the 8 for the 9 matchup, because Columbus right now is 4 points behind it. Obviously, we're at the quarter pole here. How would you assess Toronto at the quarter pole right now, being in sixth with 3 wins in their first 9?
Yeah, unbeaten in 7 as well. A lot of draws in there, which is always a bit of a concern, especially during this long home stretch. 9 games. I think they're 6 games in right now, and they've got points, but they haven't got a ton of points with all those draws. So you know, that's a slight concern given that they're conceding so many goals. There's a couple of away matches before the World Cup break, which are really important, obviously, to keep the momentum going. But I think with all the new faces, I think TFC fans are pretty happy overall, despite the attendance not being great. I think it's 3rd worst in MLS right now, which is unheard of for this club.
Well, it's like 5 degrees outside.
Well, that's part of it.
I mean,
but we're tough up here, John. You kidding me? It's football weather. 5 degrees, rain. Come on.
Short sleeves. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing what a bit of winning will do, though, and maybe a few degrees in the old barometer there. That will change everything. But yeah, I think they're where they would expect to be at this point in the season. They're going to get better, obviously. They didn't bring in a number of signings till very late in the window, as is the MLS way, it seems, right? So you don't really know what you have, but you know it couldn't have been much worse in the last few years, really. And they've been loyal to Robin Fraser, who seems to be paying off right now. He's a calm, collected kind of guy, not too emotional, which is what this team needs. So I think they're probably pretty happy at the moment with where they're at. In 6th place, it's a weird league, you know. You're in the hunt, right? And then you get to the show, who knows what happens. But overall, in what's going to be such a weird season with the World Cup anyway, I think they're very happy with where they're at.
Yeah, even though you're not banking as many points at home as you would like. Craig, I come walking in the door at BMO this weekend. Is there anything else that we have not hit on the board that folks need to be keeping an eye on, other than sitting on the under the overhang so they don't get wet?
yeah, perhaps. Well, I would expect a bunch of chances, probably a bunch of goals as well for a team. I mean, if Atlanta come in here, like I said before, if they come in here and look after themselves and hold up Josh Sargent, organize themselves, they will play a very chaotic type of style, Toronto SC in the last few games. That's what it seems to be, very disjointed, but offensively creating chances. So it's going to be important that everybody, and Turner in goal does well. Like, he played well again last night, but organizes everything defensively and structures themselves. And if they do that, they'll have an absolute chance, because they will get opportunities in the offensive zone. When you mentioned about, playing to a style that's going to suit strikers, Josh Sargent, or anybody, somebody like Kyle Larin, the Canadian international, strikes me as somebody that, wasn't doing too well in Spain. Then he ends up in the Dutch league, doesn't get an opportunity. Almost, we're wondering whether he's even going to get in the squad or play for the national team come the World Cup. He makes a move. He gets a place in Southampton, and that seems to be just the right fit for him. The right structure, the right players that he's playing with, and he can't stop scoring all of a sudden. So you're right. It's so important to play to the strength of the striker and have those players that can do that to help, accommodate those strikers as well. And it does take time.
And so then for me, I guess the matchup to look at is the center back pairing for Atlanta United, a combination of an Mihai, Stian Gregerson, and or Juan Barracol, going up against Josh Sargent for the matinee on Saturday. Okay, Sharms, I need you to cut the promo for me, and I need you to include the other business that you are in, because we have to figure out how to get the pies from the Golden Horseshoe down here to the studios so we can share the experience and the love and all of the elbow grease that you have put into the pies. So tell me, Footy Prime, tell me about the pies before you get out of here.
Yeah. Well, Footy Prime, we started this back in 2019. Craig, myself, Danny Dichio at the time, Dan Wong, and Jeff Cole. Wow. Since then, Deitch has gone to the coaching ranks, of course, in Detroit right now. But yeah, we try to stay relevant. We thought we'd be there for a year or so, and then we get offered amazing jobs in the broadcast industry. And here we are now, 6 years later, still doing this. But no, we love it. It's very much banter oriented. It's like a bunch of good friends having a few pints, talking about all things sport, football, using the sport really as a vehicle for wherever we want to go. We have a lot of fun. We record 4 to 5 times a week. Footy Prime, the podcast, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We have a YouTube channel as well. Follow us on Instagram, all that good stuff. And basically, we're a bunch of idiots trying to sound smart, which I think makes us in good content. And as for the pies, Sharman's Proper Pies in Ontario here in Canada, and we'd love to expand. And anyone that wants to invest financially, that would really help. And we will expand across North America. British-style pies. Craig's a fan. In fact, Craig and Danny Dichio were, when we first started the business way back in 2018, they were our guinea pigs. And I would try some things, make some pies for them. They give me their feedback, having known the pie culture from England. So without Craig, there'd be no Sharman's Proper Pies.
Yeah, we're encouraging them to do it because they are fantastic.
Fantastic. See, like I said, we got to find a way to get those across the Peace Bridge and work down here to the studio space and have our breaking of the bread. You guys know, and I say this genuinely, it's always good because, like I said, Sharms and I go back probably about 2 decades, and from our time on King Street, and it's always fun for me to see how things continue to grow with you guys. We're in our 10th season. You guys are in your 8th. And so it's just great to see how things continue to evolve. Do not be strangers. If you wish to vent your spleen about anything, you've got the key to the kingdom now. You know where the key is under the doormat. You know where the garage door opener is. Just literally yell at me and go, "Yo, Nelson, look, I got to vent my spleen on something. When can I come in?" And you guys know that you can come in anytime because, hey, look, we talk. It's always good to catch up with friends. Craig, James, it's great to see you guys. And just stay dry and enjoy the game this weekend. We'll catch up with you soon. Yeah, Sharms, on the backside, when you got stuff to talk about, just literally yell at me and you'll come back in and we'll go from there. Good to see you guys.
Thanks, John.
Great to see you. Thanks, John.
For sure. And likewise, mate, you're always welcome on Footy Prime. We'll get you up here at some point very soon.
Yes, no doubt about it. There goes Craig and James. So it's great to see them and find out what's going on the planet from their perspective.